We'll shoot the breeze, guys. I mean, it's getting ready to go live now, guys. Okay, so hold on. It's going live. And then what I'll do is I'll keep on. I'm setting it up now. I think we're actually live now. Let me just because I also I have a couple of things we'll touch on. All right, so hold on, that backtrack. So let me pause that. All right, guys. So wait, we're setting up. So people are going to be signing in soon, but just give me a second, guys. I want to share this out, and then we'll start. So if you remember, guys, we're live right now, so people could hear everything. Just to give you the heads up. So how's the weather, guys, down by you, Russ?
We still got a couple inches of snow outside here.
Are you there, Russ? You're posing.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
What about you, Soto? You're in Jersey, right?
Yeah, you know, we got this great weather going. I can't complain. I like the weather.
Yeah, I'm just, in case people are wondering, because we are having people come in, I'm just sharing it out before we start, guys. So just give me a second. I'm sharing it out to our different correctional officer groups on Facebook. So just bear with me, and then we'll get started. I just want to make sure we share it out. A couple of groups. And then, hold on. Okay, I guess that's good. I put it on Facebook. I'll also put it on I'll put it on LinkedIn, and I'll put it on Instagram too, just to have it out there. So hold on one second, guys, then we'll get started. Sure the audience is aware of this, how it works. Corona.
Dance and sing in the meantime.
I wish I could have people that could actually do this for me. Hold on. Just one last spot. I'm gonna put it on Instagram now, just to say we're live now. I just wanna. I'll put an old picture of me. Hold on, guys. I'm gonna talk through this. Tier Talk is live now, discussing coronavirus in our prisons and jails. You gotta love talk text. All right, we're good. Now I just got to go back to YouTube, lower it. We have a few people watching already. I'll just lower the volume there. Hello, guys. All right, guys. People are starting to come in. All right, guys. So real quick, what we decided to do was to give you guys some updates on, the coronavirus going into our prisons and jails, the threat it could pose, maybe some preventive measures, some tips. But the key here, I definitely want to provide some updates because we have unfortunately had incidences where staff has been affected and prisons and jails are going through quarantine procedures. But before we go into the updates and basically got some tips and knowledge, we'd love to introduce ourselves. My name is Anthony Gangi, host of Tier Talk. Russ, who are you? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Russ Hamilton. I'm a retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections. Started my career way back in '89 at San Quentin. Later on, I transferred and then promoted. And then later on, even further after that, after I retired for the first time, I went to work for a detention center housing juveniles in Northern California.
Yeah, you kept yourself busy, didn't it? You went the distance. Even when you could retire, you stayed in the field. And now that you're retired, you're still in the field giving out tips, Russ.
Every day I'm here trying to make corrections better, man, trying to think outside the box and trying to bring content, knowledge, and training to everyone that's out there in the field still.
Well, you're doing it, Russ. And I also have Louis Soto, who is a retired major and now a college professor. What's up, Lou?
Hey, how we doing, guys? Retired Major Louis Soto here. Recently retired back in 2017, and I've been teaching at Rutgers University since 2016 in the Intro to Criminal Justice and Prison and Prisoners classes, 100 and 200 level classes. I'm still working. I'm in the field. I'm now supervisor of operations in a reentry facility that deals with still inmates and their first step getting out into the community, as well as parolees. We deal with males as well as females. and very interesting dynamic today because we are still dealing with the coronavirus and how it affects us.
Guys, I also want to dedicate this episode to Officer Perez. He was a investigator for the New York City Department of Corrections. Unfortunately, I believe he passed on Sunday, which was March 14th, of the coronavirus. At the time, he had minimal contact with inmates. Again, he was an investigator. I believe he was out of Queens. But the reason why we're doing an update is because we actually have Rikers Island, I believe, actually has a confirmed case right here. Just to give you guys the heads up on this, Rikers Island inmate has contracted coronavirus. An inmate at Rikers Island has contracted a coronavirus. The Daily News has learned the first person in city custody to test positive for COVID-19. The news came just hours after union officials announced that a correctional officer also has the infection. The correctional officer, a member of the Security Operations Division, worked at the entrance gate at Rikers. Advocates have called for drastically reducing the jail population in the city to curb the spread of coronavirus. First of all, I want to discuss that real quick. So New York is touching on that. We saw that in Ohio, Cuyahoga County. We see that in Denver. We see that out in LA. I think a lot of people are using the fear of the coronavirus to push criminal justice reform and start getting out low-level offenders or stop arresting low-level offenders. Now, my concern of this is real quick is that that's not really dealing with the problem. You're actually just passing it off. So like if I have a low-level offender in the prison and we're rushing out, we're rushing on the hearing to get them released, what about if they have it? I'm releasing them back into the community, or if they get sentenced, they're going back into the prison. So I would think the best measure would be to handle the situations within the, within your institution. But I feel that a lot of people right now are trying to use this coronavirus, the fear of the coronavirus, to kind of go along with this criminal justice reform of lighter sentences. What's your thoughts on that, Lou?
Well, you probably saw the same communications that we saw. There's actually family members that are out there asking for this, for the early releases and stuff like that, because they see it being practiced in other states. So here in New Jersey, family members are asking for that. Listen, why keep people in either a halfway house or keep them in a, you just charge them or whatever? Why don't you keep them out in the public, trying to basically keep everybody safe? I don't think that bypassing our criminal justice system is the best way to answer those questions or answer that problem, or I don't think it's a solution at the time. I mean, we still have to continue to keep our criminal justice system intact, let it continue to work, and do what we're told and what we're asked to do to try to mitigate the effects of the coronavirus. So we'll see.
Right, I agree with you, Soto. I'm hoping that, we're actually more concerned about the threat than the actual criminal justice reform. I believe that there should be measures within their own jail to handle it, because all you're doing to me is just forwarding the buck. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Well, yeah, I agree with what Lewis said there. I think that what we have to take into consideration is I don't think it's good that we're making decisions based on these feelings of stress, threats, danger, and the unknown. I think that, there's obviously some things we're going to have to do. We're going to have to innovate. We're going to have to do some out of the box thinking. There may be a part of that we may, just out of necessity and pragmatism, may have to cave to a little bit, but I don't think this is the right time to just throw up our hands and say, you know what, we don't know what the answers are. I think what we need to do is we need to retrench and redraw the lines and do a better job of figuring out where we need to take this at the moment. We don't know right now, I don't think, what things are gonna look like 2 weeks from now, let alone 2 months from now. And so trying to make big, huge, system changing decisions, not a good time for that, I don't think.
Right, and actually you could see that, to me, I could be wrong, but to me, I just don't see the benefits of how that provides a safer environment. A lot of people that are arrestees may not have a place to go, so you're just sending them back out the streets. we're scrambling at the prison level. So just forward them up to us when we're not ready. I think they're just more concerned about themselves. And to me, that kind of, it just frustrates me. But some people that don't have the information, they may believe at first that this is a great idea, but it's not. If anything, we should be closest to locking down than ever before, which means that we should kind of not be allowing people out. You know, we shouldn't be. And they're also telling the police, hey, don't go after every low-level offender, you know, push for summons to meet in court later on. Again, to me, it's really just a political move. In my point, I just think it's bad timing for that. That's just my concern, because now you also have the inmates on the inside, because I was reading an article today from Corrections 1, where now you have the inmates on the inside. They hear all this, and now they're pushing for release because they're saying that they're not safe. So what people don't realize is that inmates are still connected to the modern world. So when there's these pushes to get the inmates out, and again, justifying it by, because we got to make them safe, what are you saying about us behind the wall? That we can't keep it safe. So you start actually getting pandemonium, and then we have to try to control that. We have to try to balance the fear that they're putting out there with reality, which is we've dealt with infectious diseases before. You know, we'll do our best to maintain it. But with that said, the public, you're putting fear into these inmates because you're saying that we got to get them out to keep them safe, and these inmates are going to run all over that. What's your thoughts on that, Russ, with how what's outside in the real world, how they don't realize how it's impacting us when they start sensationalizing everything?
Oh, absolutely. You know, there's so many different facets to that. You know, today, going around and talking in some of the forums and stuff, it was amazing. I know one institution, there were inmates that were complaining about staff wearing masks. And I was, you know, and I was trying to get across to some of the staff there. I said, man, you really have to be on top of educating those inmates that when you're wearing that mask, you're protecting them from the threat they face. It's not that you're protecting yourself from them, because you're the outside influence. You're the one that could be carrying that in there. There's just no knowing yet. And so I think what's happening is a lot of people are just acting on those fears. And I think a lot of people are actually capitalizing on fears. And when you capitalize on fears, you know, you're just trying to take advantage of the situation to do what you want to do. And I think that's what some of the inmate public is involved in right now. And it's bouncing down to that lower level with the inmates inside the joints. And they're just trying to take advantage of the situation for all it's worth. And we know from experience that that is what they do.
And you know what? You made great sense when it comes to the fear, the sensationalism. We have to kind of make sure, again, we balance that, we control that. And when you talk about the mask and the preventive measures, right now, even if we allowed masks to be worn by staff or inmates, let me just explain that real quick. We're very limited in supply. So if you're very limited, who would you want the mask to go to first? You would want the mask to go to the people that can actually spread it, which would be the staff who coming from the outside in. And the problem is a lot of people think they're looking at the mask as, well, yeah, that's going to protect me. No, actually put the mask on the threat, and then that will protect you. And I have a feeling people got that twisted. And I think once it's clarified, once you explain it to them, especially again, the key thing here is really educating staff so they can educate the population. Once you start explaining to them, like, hey, this is why the mask is needed. It's really meant for the people coming in because they pose the threat. I think some people will understand that. But what's your thoughts on that, Lou, about the mask and who should be wearing it if allowed? But hypothetically, we are in a prison or a jail, so there are security concerns. But if allowed, who do you think should wear it, the staff or the inmates?
Well, like you said, Anthony, we need to follow what the CDC is telling us. They're the ones that have the most up-to-date information, and they are recommending that the people that should wear it is the person that can be the carrier, the person that's coming into the institution that can, like you said, bring the coronavirus into the institution. So yes, put it on the staff member that has access to the public, because most places and most states have done this throughout their correctional systems. They've stopped all volunteers for coming in. They've stopped all non-essential visits to come in. They stop all visits from people from the outside. So the only people that are coming in is us, the ones that are essential employees that are working every day and we're the ones that are the threat at this point. I like that Russ made that determination. You know what? We're trying to educate the population. We also need to educate our staff so that the same word gets out. Another thing that kind of struck me is that with these rules, and you said it best, Anthony, they are connected. The inmates are connected with the outside world. They still get phone calls. They still get to write letters. They still, some of them even have access to email because of the way our policies work. So they are connected with the outside world, and they may take advantage of, oh yeah, well, I need to be protected. They know the rules, and some states like here in New Jersey, they just put this into a place where all theaters are closed and all like large groups of 50 or more are no longer valid. Well, our jails are filled. Our institutions are filled. How do you manage that? How do you say, look, we can't have groups of 50? I know that at my facility today, they put out a directive that even when we go to the mess halls, which are large and large numbers, congregate, that we're trying to do that social distancing and keeping the inmates kind of like 6 feet apart from each other. But how do you do that in a mess hall? So we're kind of working and learning as we go along, putting a space between the inmates as they eat right at their mess, whether it be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. We're minimizing also the groups that we're having, not making large groups and trying to comply with these laws and things that are happening outside in society, but we're trying to apply it as best we can as inside the facility.
Right, and it's a mixture of both preventive and reactionary measures. So I think a lot of people want us to say, including staff and the population, that we're 100% sure that we won't have it happen in our facility. And obviously we can't say that, So I think that a lot of people are focusing a lot of energy on the preventive measures, and they're kind of not focusing a lot on the reactionary measures, which is, where we could be just as effective. So a lot of people are like, well, it can come in, we got to do this. Okay, yeah, but we're not going to be able to 100% stop it. I'm assuming it's not about if, it's about when. So you have to have confidence in how we're going to react, because to me, we've done this before. It's no different than any type of infectious disease. You quarantine the individuals, you make sure that the environment's safe. Now, this does have a bit of a rapid spread because of how long it can survive on surfaces. But again, we can increase the cleaning. We can make sure that we're washing our hands, got the sanitizer out there. But the key is, in the process of why we're preventing or preparing to prevent, we also have to make sure that we're ready to react, just in case we get that exposure and exactly what we got to do. And I'm very confident that we've done this before, and that we are going to be able to react effectively. That is here. And this is the sad thing, is that people want like this 100% fail-proof plan that is not going to come in. And then even though we bust our ass reacting and making sure it doesn't spread, we're still the ones that are going to be blamed. We're still the ones that didn't go the extra measure to prevent, and for the public to say, yeah, we got to let the inmates out because, they're afraid for the inmates, whatever it is. Yeah, but you're causing pandemonium. And now when we have to react, we're going to have a population that doesn't understand the reality, and they're going to be just acting on fear, and all they're doing is fueling the flame. So, I mean, Soto, in your experience, how do you balance the preventive measures, but then also realize that even though we have to react, that doesn't mean we failed. It just means that we've gotten to that point where we did what we could do, but now unfortunately got in. Now we have to go with the reactionary measures. How do you balance confidence in both the preventive and the reactionary measures needed to secure an infectious disease?
Well, like I said, in New Jersey, they're doing very good strides in the preventative side. We test everyone coming in as far as taking the temperature, even though we know that's a minute thing and not everybody's going to display those signs. But just a smart thing to do is, as you're coming in, asking those questions that the CDC asks us to ask, making sure people are sanitizing their hands prior to coming into the institution, taking their temperature prior to coming in. These are good old preventative measures. But like you said, it's not if we're going to get this inside of our prisons, it's when and how do we react. So another good thing that we're doing is we're actually having just like we do a fire drill, preparing ourselves in case of a fire, we're also preparing ourselves and running drills in case someone does, in effect, end up having symptoms, signs that not necessarily may mean that they have the coronavirus, but may mean that they're have a cold or a flu or something like that, and we have to rule that they have the coronavirus. We have to rule that out. We're getting a minimal amount of testing kits. They're not testing kits. They're actually, you're taking the swabs from the inmates if they pose such a thing, and then we're sending it out to get tested. We've been lucky so far that we haven't heard of a case in New Jersey just yet. But just like you said, it's not if it's going to get in there, it's actually when and how we're going to react to it.
Right. And Russ, what's your thoughts? I mean, do you have confidence? Because I know that you've dealt with infectious disease before. Do you have confidence in the reactionary measures that prisons and jails take to make sure that population and staff are safe?
You know, I would say that all things considered, the average inmate in a prison, especially in a prison, I'll say, is probably going to be safer than just left to their own devices out there in the world. One of my concerns is that with this intention to start just, putting people out there, we've already discussed earlier in this video about inmates taking advantage of situations in order to try and push to get released or early out or whatever. Well, we also know they're going to take advantage of the situation out there with people being in danger and not having a big, we'll have a big police presence perhaps on the street, but not enough officers to go around to chase those offenders that are going to get out and start doing the knucklehead stuff that they do day in and day out, stealing cars, pilfering houses, whatever it is. I don't think that sparking a crime spree is in our best interest. I think that the prisons and the jails can both deal with this very effectively. And I'm pretty sure that we're about to find out just how effectively we can over the next few weeks. My concern has been that as the number of illnesses rise, that we could see a spike that's going to make it difficult to perhaps staff the prisons and jails. If we do manage to, they've talked about this across the media and stuff, if we do manage to flatten that curve where we have, the same number of people maybe getting sick, but over a longer period of time, hopefully we can tamp that down. So I think it remains to be seen exactly what all of the measures we're going to have to take are. This is going to be an on the fly and out of the box thinking scenario, along with some of the things that we've learned and already implemented over the years. I think we're up to the task, but like I say, we're going to be tested and we're going to be measured and we're going to find out if we really have it.
Hey, Russ, by the way, Guardian RFID says nice hat.
I knew I did this just for them. I knew they'd be watching today.
They're always in the distance watching. Hey, so you remember how prior to that we were just talking about people getting released from the jail? So New York City's trying to do that. Again, that criminal justice stuff. I like what Elias Hussamuddin said, because his concern is that they got this idea about releasing people out, but what about staff? Does anybody care about staff? Like, is that really an idea that's beneficial or balanced? And I'm 100%. I mean, let's all worry about the inmates, but we have staff. And Elias Hussamuddin, this is actually what he said. Oh, by the way, guys. Oh, hold on. Hey, Russ, fill the air for a second. I got to take this phone call. Just fill the air.
All right. So I'm filling air because Anthony has a phone call he has to take. So I'm just going to go into a little bit more of the coronavirus, maybe a little bit of my personal experiences. Later on, there'll be a dance number. But anyway, let's see how well I fill this. So what I was talking about before is as we continue to have spikes with regard to this illness, if and when that does start happening, that's going to be the point at which we're going to be the most stressed. That's going to be the point at which we may end up having to succumb to this idea about, early releases or trying to release some low-level offenders. I'm not one to buy into the whole low-level offender or non-violent type of offender, because to me, it's all violence. When you're taking someone's property from them, when you're distributing poison for them to shoot in their veins. To me, that's all a form of violence. It may not be immediately physical, but those are the kinds of people that we want to keep, you know, from the streets to a degree, and try and, you know, either rehabilitate them or make them pay the price for their crimes. I see that Anthony's back, so I'm going to let him start to take back
Yeah,
over
actually,
here. What we got
Connie
going
is
on?
actually, I'm gonna see if I can get Connie to join us as well, to see
Oh,
if she
good.
can hop on this discussion. But what I wanted to say was, so Elias actually said, and again, just going back, guys, forgive me, guys, it is live. So, you know, we're just kind of dealing with life as well. So you're sending all these inmates out, that's great, but what are you really doing for staff? Oh, this phone just keeps on going off. But what are you really doing for staff? So Elias said something to me that was great. Now, by the way, guys, this was before the officer, well, before the inmate got diagnosed with the coronavirus, and then you have the officer at the gate at Rikers Island. But this was after the death of our hero, who was the investigator, Investigator Perez. But he said, so far we've been lucky. By the way, things have changed. I just mentioned that earlier in the episode, but he wants to note that, but the environment that we're in, we shouldn't have to have fight just to have them suspend visits. Mind you, guys, at the time when this was done, the union had to push to not allow visitors in, because remember, during this coronavirus thing, you want to limit any outside contact. So visitors, volunteers, you really want to cut down to the essential staff, which would probably be food service, maintenance, custody. I would go as far as saying classification, because you got releases. I would go as far as saying, let's see, did I say maintenance yet?
Medical.
I say
you need medical.
medical, mental health. So we want just the essentials. But he mentioned this. This is what to me hit home. He said we still don't have enough supplies. We still don't have enough gloves. We don't have enough masks. We don't have enough sanitizers. So basically, we don't have the ability to work from home. We have 5,400 people in our custody. And at this time, that's when he says, so far I've been lucky, but who's going to help staff? Like so far, these plans they have seem to only be going one side. What's your thoughts on Elias Hussamadin, who's the president of COBA, on basically about not being protected, the protective equipment? What's your thoughts, Soto?
Yeah, that's a very good point. We are always thinking about how we protect the inmate population, which that they're in our care, but we cannot forget about staff. And remember, just like you said, Anthony, you're trying to run this video, life is going on, you're answering the phones, you know, our staff have lives of their own. You know, they're being affected by kids not being able to go to school, how daycares are not being opened anymore. Everybody's staying home, and our staff has to somehow figure out, how do I take care of my family and yet go to work? We don't have that option of staying home and, you know, taking care of our inmate population from our homes. That doesn't happen. We have to take that step, and we have to go to work. And we may not only have to go to work, we may get mandatory to work an additional shift. You can imagine the stress level that's going to happen, because you're trying to coexist with your own life and with the workload that you have. And obviously we know that stress is another factor that can, you know, lessen your immune system. Now we're more at risk of catching the coronavirus. So very important point. We have to take care of our staff.
Great point. So I obviously agree. You know, the key here is that we're trying to balance it both ways. And I want people to know that, you know, staff, medical, the essential employees, custody, we mentioned before, they're risking their lives. They're going in there. They're forced to go in. They're not able to take leave. They're not able to work from home. So amongst this shutdown, these warriors are going in, and the least we could do is find measures to protect them. And when we're trying to implement these changes, how do you balance that? Sure, you know, you want the inmate population protected, but who do you think is going to protect the inmate population? You know, I mean, there is not going to be this end of the world scenario where we just start, well, you know what, we can't do, let's let everybody, let all the inmates out. No, that's not a solution. You're going to have staff go through the measures, but we want to be able to protect staff. And one of the things that they're pushing now, and we'll try to define here within the prison setting, is social distancing. And Soto mentioned a great point that, you know, we work in a prison, you know, jails, you know, it's going to be very hard to create that 3 to 6 foot space because spaces are small. So again, the effort right now is to cut programming back, or, reduce the sizes in half. So if you have programs that have, let's say, a room that could fit 20, try to knock it down to 10. Or having said that, how about just not do the programs? Because at that point, the people that run the programs, maybe they pose a risk. So maybe you cut down staffing to the bare essentials of what that specific department needs. And then you go ahead and let everybody else go and kind of put the programs at the bottom of the priority list, So just kind of keeping people separate. Also, certain religious services, there are certain religious services that require, like the Muslim movements, they could have a very big presence. And the thing is that, they tend to be close when they pray. That may not be good in this time. And also, I'm hoping that when we're able to explain these cancellations, we give the population an education as to why it has to happen. And one last thing is, people like, well, you may not be able to have contact visits, but you could still have non-contact visits. Well, non-contact visitors still have to interact with staff. So all these solutions that look great on the surface, someone with experience says, hey, that's not going to work. Russ, what was your thoughts when you first said, hey, if visitors pose a threat, why not make it non-contact visits?
Yeah, that's a great point, because the first thing I start thinking about are the officers that have to process those visitors in, the other ancillary staff that might have to deal with those visitors. And then, you're going to have to either have an inmate crew or a janitorial crew that's going to have to go in there and clean where they were visiting at, all the glass and stuff. And, it's just one of those scenarios where if you provide a big enough breach for the virus to get through, at some point it's going to happen. So cutting back to minimal staffing, cutting back to minimal programs, trying to run recreation and yard in ways, hopefully, where you can diminish the number of inmates that are on the yard, maybe cutting back the hours so that you can have maybe a longer period, say 12 hours, where you can go to a graveyard staffing pattern or something, and you're only running the inmates outside their cells or to programs or yard or whatever you want to call it, maybe for 12 hours instead of the usual 16. All those things can help. But when you're working against cross purposes and you're caving to all the visitation and stuff, I mean, you're begging for something to go wrong.
And Russ, you're right on point. Like, a lot of the solutions that we could have would be very simple if people would let us do what we have to do. Everybody just, well, when you're doing this, you're going to infringe on their rights. At this point, let's just worry about people's safety. Let's just worry about their health, because you want to get us on the rights, but then if we have a pandemonium or a spread, we're in trouble for that too. So at this point, that's when we step up and we say, okay, safety and security comes first, health comes first. And, if we have to lock it down, if we have to limit movement, and most of the time, I'm sure the inmates are going to be okay with that at this time. You have a lot of inmates that are OCD. They don't want to be around, where they can get sick, where they can, easily be exposed to, the coronavirus. So I don't think it's going to be such a hard thing to implement. But the sad thing is that when you get the public that's out there that just doesn't know, and they're pushing for this agenda just to kind of release all these inmates, it just applies pressure to us behind the wall, where we're trying to control everything, and they're making things, they're the ones that are creating pandemonium. The key here right now, and we mentioned this in a few shows before, is that we as staff, the professionals that we are, we have to balance the fear that is being put out there by the news with reality. And how we do that is we go through staff, and then staff may talk to what we call, some people will call them inmate representatives, some people will call them tier reps, and then you expect a level of a working relationship with them. You do, because I'm giving you some information, but I'm curious at how you deliver the information. So like, if you know that we're making all efforts to do what's got to be done, you have to relay that to the population. You're my middle person at that point. And how you relay that information is important, because that's what eases out the fear. And if you keep that constant communication between the staff and those inmate representatives, you should be okay. You may have a few stragglers, but for the most part, they wind up policing each other, no different than we would police a rogue staff member. But at a time like this, Soto, how important is it for, you know, administration, staff to have that relationship with those inmate representatives?
It's very important, and I'll go one step further. I know that here in Jersey, we've asked our administrators and our assistant superintendents, associates, to be the ones that are relaying the information of any cancellations, such as visits, things that are very important to the inmate population. We've asked the actual administrators to make a presence in the units and go there and speak themselves, not just to the tier reps, but to the inmate population themselves. That's what helps to appease and to keep things in balance and in control when they see that administration is actually out there doing what they need to do to ensure that everybody is informed, not just the staff, but also the inmate population. I'm telling you, it works best if people would just stay out of our way and let us do what us as professionals know how to do. This isn't the first time that we've had something like this happen, not maybe to this extent, but we know how to handle the situation. But sometimes we have to think about, like what you just said, let's not forget that we have to prepare to act when in fact the coronavirus makes it into our prisons, right? Because outside in society, hospitals are vying for beds right now. They're looking for space to put people that they know are going to be infected, are going to be affected, and they need beds. So they're opening like hospitals that just nearly closed. They're making pop-up tents that will serve as places for people to be, to get treated or to get triaged. How about us in the institutions? Some prisons may not have a clinic, may not have a hospital. When we try to isolate and contain, we may run into those problems. So we need to have a plan in place and practice it so that we know what to do when it reaches our population.
And Russ, would you agree with Soto? I do.
Oh yeah, because I mean, that's ultimately what we're striving to do. The problem, of course, but also not just the problem, but also the goal is to be able to get the inmates vested in being part of the solution by giving them enough of that information. You know, I think if you can impress upon them, of course, not all of them are going to listen. It's hard to get them to listen, but if they understand that, you know, the more we lock down and the more we're able to, you know, stop potential cases from happening, the quicker it's going to be that we get to the other side, that we can start loosening up. But the looser we stay now, the longer it's going to take, and the more of a spike we're going to see, and the longer it's going to drag things out. So I would try and impress upon them that, you know, try and show them that they have an interest in helping comply and keeping things clean, and understanding that visits are going away for a while and it's for a reason.
And I agree. And I will tell you one thing, when the information gets presented fairly and we kind of get less complaints, then we're able to do what needs to be done instead of having to filter through all these bogus complaints, because, you know, they're just running amok. Some are going to use the system, that's what they do, but some people may generally not have an understanding. So again, we provide the understanding, give the inmate representatives their chance to understand, let them, you know, get whatever question they got to get out. Once they get a clear understanding, I expect that understanding to be relayed to the population so we can deal with those bogus complaints. But I also expect that if they have those inmates that are trying to make those bogus complaints, I do expect the inmate representatives to kind of help us with that. You know, to say, okay, listen, I couldn't stop everyone, but, you know, I was filtering a lot of those questions. And what I did was I collected the questions and then I presented them to you. So basically, instead of you getting a million questions from a million different people, it goes to the inmate representative who then could give it to you. And it's just, you know, it's just less interaction, because right now we're very busy. So instead of having to talk to 1 million, I could talk to one and relay that information forward. And again, would you agree, Soto, that at this time right now, the biggest concern are when we're trying to correct the measures, when we're trying to deal with these immediate concerns, there are going to be people that are either in fear or just decide to misuse the system based on their whatever goal it is that they're trying to accomplish, which winds up setting us back and messes with what we need to get done.
I totally agree. You know, there's always going to be someone that attempts to take advantage of whatever the situation may be. But information is power. Information is what leads to clarity, is what leads to usually solving or coming up with a solution to a combined problem. What I found that has been very interesting is that there hasn't been that many complaints because of the information that we've been putting out. And this is nationwide. I mean, we can say that the inmate population is very well informed because they have still that draw, that touch, that base with the outside public, with their family members. So they're very well informed. They watch the news. They can see, you know, the numbers rise outside in the public sector. Russ is absolutely correct. The safest place to be is probably inside of an institution where the only way that anything can come is for us, the essential personnel, to bring it into the facility. So, I mean, it's a topic that needs to continue to be discussed. The inmate representatives are a very good way to get information across, to get their concerns or the inmate population concerns to administration in a streamlined way. So that way we can deal with just the one or maybe the few reps instead of the entire population. Never forgetting that they need to see us, the guys that are in the suits and ties, walk out there so that it could be a boost, not only for the inmate population, but for our staff. So they understand, hey, we got your back.
Right, guys. And there are some facilities that have had some tests that are positive. Obviously, it's the staff, and then it kind of makes its way to the inmates. We talked about New York, Washington. I believe Washington was one of the first. Miami-Dade County, Sing Sing. Sing Sing had a positive test for the coronavirus. Detroit Detention Center employees test positive for coronavirus. Now, each one has taken their own measures, definitely quarantining individuals, sending staff home, and obviously they can't come back until they're cleared. But there's going to be always going to be a scramble, because the concerns right now is when you have facilities with very limited space, when is it that you go from worrying about the individual that could pose the threat as opposed to worrying about the unit, like the number? So if you have 1 or 2 inmates that pose a threat, where do we evaluate those inmates? You know, where is it safe for medical? How should medical respond? Because we're limited gear. So is medical going to respond to every flu-like symptom covered up? Because if so, we're going to run out when it's really needed. And also if you have more than one, if you have multiple inmates, I mean, should we at that point leave the concern on the unit, quarantine the unit? I mean, there's just so many things that can happen that I think some of it you could prep for, but honestly, I do trust in our professionals that as long as we have a level of command, something that shows that we report to this, we're able to figure it out. The only time we really get lost is if we don't have an established level of command and we don't know where to go to next. So whoever is in charge has to be able to adapt and adjust. So I would like to think there's a partnership between safety and security and medical, where when a novel incident happens, they communicate and they say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then you just do it, you know, because the scramble comes when you really don't know who's in control. Is it medical? Is it custody? Well, how about we do a partnership? You know, how about we create some type of partnership where, you know, both, you know, kind of come down with decisions that are beneficial. But Russ, I mean, to prepare for everything that can possibly come your way, you just can't. So what would you recommend for something that's unique? How would you recommend the agency or that specific facility deal with something that they never had to deal with before?
You know, I would just go about it from the viewpoint of contingency planning for probabilities, not possibilities, just probabilities. And I would try and pick, you know, the few most likely scenarios where something like this is going to start to present itself. And then I would try and pick through what the problems are with isolating that individual or other individuals. And of course, you're going to have a lot of input from the medical side with this. And then if possible, as long as we're doing this stuff all day and all night, you should be running some scenario drills. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, full on gear, everything like that, but just, you know, find a point. Okay, decide that, okay, this exposure is here. This inmate is showing signs. What are we going to do to move that inmate? How close are we going to get him? Are we going to ask him if he can, put on a mask? Who's going to be the ones that are actually going to transport him if he's not ambulatory? And start working these things through and finding the little chinks in your armor that are going to throw things out of whack. It's mostly a mental exercise, but sometimes walking through it physically will help you identify those things a little bit better. And this gives staff a feeling that they're more in control and that they're becoming better prepared. And you just have to, look at it from that perspective and try and, find out your strengths, find out your weaknesses, and then adapt.
I know you want to add to that, Soto. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I always love to practice what you preach, right? You like to walk through things. You like to see how it will pan out, because a plan in your head can not go so well when you actually put it out in practicality. So I definitely enjoy sitting down, talking with experts, right? And involving everyone. You have to involve everyone. I mean, we're all pretty much in the correctional profession trained in how to do incident command. So why not use that to our advantage? And, that doesn't take into play just so much rank structure, but just someone that's going to be one incident commander who's getting the information, who's getting the resources laid out to where they need to be and dispersing those resources. And that can include someone from custody level, from the medical field, because isolation and containment, that may be something that medical has to help us out with, give us the best advice. I have things in my mind that I would have done if I was still in at the facility myself. We know who the highest risk population is. If we have the elderly inmates, you have to think about, well, maybe those are the ones that we need to protect first. Maybe we move them to a different part of the institution, maybe a housing unit by themselves. But then you have to think about it. How about if one of the ones that I'm moving is already infected with it and I'm just moving that into a different part of the institution? So these are things that need to be thought out, basically talked about, and then practice and see what we can do and come up with the best solutions.
Right. And again, the preventive measures, the cleaning, I mean, if they're limited contact with family, we can always figure out if we're cutting back on programs, maybe there's ways that we can supplement that with phone time. But again, someone even went as far as saying, well, you can't let them use the phone. You can't let them share things. I mean, that's rather extreme. I don't think we're at that level yet. Some people have also said, hey, Gangi, let me ask you a question. When will it ever get to the point when you're going to lock down staff in the facility? I said, in my opinion, the only time I could ever see that happening, if the threat becomes so great on the outside that you have to, again, for safety and security reasons, you have to just place that limit and say, you know what, guys, because like Soto said, yes, prisons and jails could be the safest spot. And I agree, because you're shielded from the outside. But once there's that crack in armor, like Russ said, it goes from safe to pandemonium. So, I think at that point, if there's a chance that the threat is so great from the outside that we have to go into automatic lockdown mode, we have to be prepared for that right now. Staff does, inmates do. If you're essential, you have to be prepared that there could be a chance that this gets so bad that you could be in this facility for weeks, possibly. But again, that's if it gets to that extreme level. But Russ, what do you think about that? You think that if that's possible, if it gets to that extreme level, that would be a reaction?
Well, there's a couple of different, probabilities that I see there. First of all, if you're being put on quarantine yourself, there's no sense in having you there at that institution, because you can't work. You can't carry out, any of the duties that you're supposed to do. You're isolated and you're not supposed to have contact with anyone. It's just as well for them to send you home, and you're going to self-isolate and self-contain. So I don't see that as being an issue with that scenario. On the other hand, if we're so short-staffed that we can't adequately protect and service our safety and security needs within the institution, then you might get stuck there. My feeling on that matter is that you're going to have to, instead of being that your default setting, that you're going to try and find some ways to work around that. You might have to have a longer graveyard shift where you need fewer bodies, because you really need to have your people fresh and you need to be able to put them in and out. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're just making a bigger breeding ground for something bad to happen inside there. So
Soto, you have
I
something?
hope that it's never pressed. I hope that it's not going to be pressed to that distance where we're going to see stuff like that. I'm hoping that what we're going to see is the occasional time where a couple people spend a day or two inside, but not weeks on end, because that's going to be really deleterious to the whole facility, to the whole department, to the whole system.
Actually, I'm going to remove somebody because they're being annoying. And he knows who he is. I removed him. I just kept all his posts hidden. He's just constantly saying release all inmates, all this other stuff, let him beat up the cops. I gave a lot of him, I let it go for a little bit. But I'm gonna just get rid of this guy. He's being annoying. Oh, the option is also add him as a moderator. Hey, Soto, what's your thoughts on that? With the, if the threat gets so great on the outside, do you see that as a potential? Like you in a higher level position, if you had to order that, would that be a tough order to give?
It's always a tough order, especially in the in the mindset that we have families ourselves, but we took this job for a reason. We're professionals for a reason. We get paid for what we do. So we know that we've had instances at different facilities where at any time, any given time, there is a lockdown and there's no movement going in, no movement going out. Whether it be weather related, whether it be, there's a hurricane coming, tornado, there's a snowstorm, a power outage, we've been prepared. We got contingency plans for that, for us to stay there and work ourselves, either the 12-hour shifts and you're 12 on, 12 off, or 8 hours, or work your 16 hours and then get out 8 hours off and come back and work. I mean, we're very, very well trained in that. We're very well versed in that. We've done it so many times before. This may be a longer, prolonged stay, which, us as administration, we would have to make sure that we have all the essentials covered. You understand that we have everything that you would have at home, where you're getting your rest, where you're de-stressing, because this is also health wise. We need to be healthy to conduct our daily routines. We have to be able to support our staff and give them what they need so they can get good rest. If they need showers, if they need, proper food. This is stuff that you have to think about. But I think that if it gets to that point that we are able and capable of doing it, and, we just got to be the professionals that we are. There are going to be case by case scenarios where you're going to have to let someone go home for whatever reason. But I think that correctional officers in itself, they know what our task is and they know what our goals are, and they can understand when things like this occur.
Right. And the thing is, guys, in the end, I just want people to realize that there's going to be a scramble, but the scramble is going to be a controlled scramble. We have professionals, trust and believe, they have a destination, they have a goal in mind. So they're never truly lost. I mean, yes, we're trying to figure out things as they come, but like anything, I mean, it's a new situation, but we know the end result. We know what's expected of us. So we may scramble for a brief second, but we know where we have to end up. I mean, guys, you ever drive on the road and you kind of, GPS messes up, but you still know, okay, I know I have to get to this location. Sometimes you have to figure it out. But the thing is, as long as you have the end game, as long as you have the end result, you're never really lost. But I think people are going to have to let us do what needs to be done. Let us figure out the things, because, I mean, sometimes there could be a trial by error, and it's sad to say, but it could be because it's novel. But like corrections, I like to believe that if, we make a mistake or we learn that something doesn't work, holy shit, we make sure we don't do it again. And if we make sure something does work, it becomes policy, it becomes mandated. And there's just so many professionals that know how to navigate from medical and custody. And I will say one thing about this, kind of like a positive to the negative, and then we'll kind of close off. I have one more thing I want to ask you guys, but again, the positive from the negative is, man, when we decide to be a team and get something done, and we're working together, I really feel that there's nothing we can't accomplish. What's your thoughts on that, Soto?
Well, let me tell you, firsthand, I see it now day in and day out. We're getting some mandates that are coming down that if we had it on any other regular day and we had nothing to do with Corona, I would think twice. I'm like, how would we get this done? How would this get accomplished? But the mandates are coming daily, sometimes hourly, and everybody working collectively as a team. I've seen how we've managed things that I would think would be impossible, but we're getting it done. So teamwork, is it's primary. It's one of the things that makes us, the best profession out there, because we can get things done as long as we collectively work. And it's just amazing to see it.
What's your thoughts on that, Russ? Teamwork, you being a supervisor as well and having to work with the other departments.
Well, it's not just about the teamwork. The teamwork is always great, and it's always, wonderful to see that. But, when you labor together under difficult circumstances and, you're out there, maybe you're spending all day and all night on a riot, doing cuffing operations and that sort of thing. And then you're coming into work the next day and then you're pulling a double. I think we've all served under some really difficult circumstances. There may not be any more difficult circumstances than what we're about to see. But from what I've seen of correctional personnel in the past, we're going to get through this with flying colors. And I think that, we're going to see people do what they always do in corrections, which is rise to the occasion. And, if you've been in this even just a minute, you have seen that. And I'm sure that Lewis and you have seen it time and time again, where you're just amazed at what staff is able to do, what they're able to do as they pull together as a team, what they're able to do given circumstances that most people would just throw up their hands and run away.
I will say, guys, I just read on Forbes magazine that first cases of coronavirus in federal prisons confirmed as two staffers test positive. It looks like the positions of the two staffers were not identified, but one employee works at the medium security prison in Berlin, New Hampshire, while the other works at the administrative facility in Grand Prairie, Texas. But again, it's going to happen. It's not a matter of, it's just when and what are we going to do to, control that spread. So we have a lot of preventive measures that we talked about, the scanning, the cleaning, eliminating people that really don't need to be there, kind of going down to the skeleton shifts, the bare bone essentials. That's another thing, guys. I mean, we're going down to the skeleton, so kind of like that third shift, we're already running low, and that's going to kind of be your basic shift. And when you're running that low, there's going to be very limited movement, because again, you have to balance the concerns of yes, medical, but also safety and security. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, man, safety and security and medical are going to supersede personal rights at this point. If we have to lock it down to keep everybody safe, we have to lock it down to keep everybody safe. Hey, Soto, what's your thoughts in closing?
Well, like I said, we have a very good challenge here. We know that we can, like Russ said, rise to the occasion and do our best. I just want everyone to be safe. Keep those suggestions from the CDC. They're very important. Make sure you continue to share with your family, with your loved ones, with the people you work with next to each other, and make sure that the inmate population is also informed. We're all in this together. We can get through it. It would be just a matter of time. We were going to look back on this and not only have it as a learning experience, but hopefully always have it as a look what a great job we did and have it for the future.
And that's the key. And you just said a great point. The fact that if anything, this could also be a learning experience, and later on, if something like this happens, we'll be more prepared because we dealt like this. But this crisis is a first for everybody. Russ, what's your thoughts in closing?
I'd just like to say this is really an unprecedented situation. I've dealt with some things that are slightly similar, but nothing like this, nothing on this scale. Unprecedented situations really call for, some outside the box thinking, some innovation, and some creativity. So it doesn't matter if you're at the lowest rung or whether you're at the highest level of admin. Let's start coming up with some ideas. Let's find ways to make things work. Let's try and think things out ahead of time and not wait till we're behind that 8 ball to start trying to, fight our way out of it. Everyone out there I know has the capability of thinking up, fantastic ideas and passing them on. And this is the point where we really need people to focus on that and take the mantle upon their shoulders and be the one to move that ball forward and get those chains going.
Yeah, that's the key, guys. I think right now, out of it all, like both you guys are saying, learning experience, balance the fear with reality. Don't run blindly, guys. If you're staff, I find it so important for you guys to get the information. Be realistic. Don't fact check, guys. Fact check, because right now the news is sensationalizing everything and it's causing pandemonium. It really is, and I think you're in a position where you can have an influence on the population. Don't be someone who's going to run blindly on everything that's tossed your way, because at that point you're going to become part of the problem. What's great is, I think if people show their reaction in a calm and controlled manner, it builds trust. Even if we're scrambling a little bit, as long as they see that we're controlled in our efforts, and it starts to build confidence. Because I'll tell you something, man, when these things start hitting a unit, you're going to have that pandemonium. You're going to have inmates that are going to want to be tested. You're going to have a bunch of stuff, but they need to really trust the response, how we react. And I'll try to keep things up to date. I'll bring everybody back on again just to, let you guys know. And hopefully when it starts to dwindle, we can change topics and go back to what we usually do. The reason why we decided to do this again is because there is misinformation out there. And I find it's our duty to kind of get the right information. If you watch it, it's all right. If you don't want to watch it, I don't care. It's up there for you guys anyway. And I wish we could have better connections. I don't know what's going on right now, but internet is very slow. We have a lot of stuff going on in the real world that I think that's affecting the internet. So I'm not going to delete the video. It's not going to be a crystal clear video, because I noticed we went in and out a little bit, but the information's solid because the audio was there, and that's the key. And before we go, I know Russ was very concerned about what concerts are going to be released on TV, like quarantine concerts. So I went ahead and posted the quarantine concert list on Russ's page. So you got a little John Legend, some cowboy with a hat, because I know that out of all the stuff that's going on, Russ, I know that you care about those concerts that you can now see for free instead of spending $800-900 a ticket.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't even know what they were.
All right, guys. I hope everybody stays safe, guys. Stay safe, stay protected. We'll keep stuff coming. Also, guys, if you want to send videos my way, Russ or Soto, please do. If you find out something interesting about this, you want to send it. I'll post it up immediately. By the way, guys, me and Connie did a show the other day, and it was a great show. I'm going to post it, but it took 15 hours. So what I think I'm going to do is, because there really is good information there, but unfortunately it's behind a little bit because it took too long to post. So I may just do another episode later on and then just post that on the back end, because there's some good information there. It's just the information's a little dated at this point. So we have to keep things up and relevant, because things are moving quick here, guys. But as always, guys, stay safe. Don't forget, like what you watch, and please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. Stay safe.